Are you ready for the ultimate Zarpado compilation facts? Subscribe and let's start. Raccoons dunk their food in water before eating, but not to clean it. The water softens the tough skin on their paws, boosting their sense of touch by up to 300%. They're basically getting a tactile X-ray of their meal before they bite. Chewing gum has two parts, a water-soluble flavor and a completely insoluble rubber base. Your saliva dissolves those flavor molecules in seconds, and you swallow them. So that flavorless chunk in your mouth 5 minutes later? Just inert rubber. Saturn's rings are younger than the dinosaurs. Recent studies show they didn't form with the planet they appeared just 10 to 100 million years ago, which means the Tyrannosaurus rex lived in a universe where Saturn was a smooth, ringless ball. A paper cut hurts more than a knife cut because under a microscope, paper's edge looks like a rusty saw blade that tears and shreds skin cells. And since it's shallow and barely bleeds, your exposed nerve endings sit there irritated by the air nonstop. The Sydney funnel-web spider is the deadliest to humans on the planet. But here's the twist. Its venom specifically targets primate nervous systems. It's completely harmless to dogs, cats, or birds. Bite your pet, nothing happens. Bite you, and it can kill you. Silkworms have been domesticated for thousands of years, and they've lost every wild instinct. They can't fly, can't camouflage, and their digestive system only handles mulberry leaves. If humans stopped breeding them tomorrow, the species would go extinct within months. Those wavy metal guardrails on highways are called beyondas, and they work like springs. When a car hits one, the metal deforms and absorbs the impact's kinetic energy. If they were rigid walls, the sudden deceleration would kill everyone inside instantly. A raindrop weighs 50 times more than a mosquito, but the mosquito survives because it's so light, it offers zero resistance. It just rides the raindrop down at full speed until it slips out the side right before impact. In Budapest, plenty of statues have noses or hands shining bright gold. Locals believe rubbing those bronze spots brings luck on exams or in love, and they've rubbed it so much the metal's worn down to a gleam that looks just like solid gold. If the moon vanished, Earth's days would last only 6 hours. The moon's gravity slows our planet's spin. Without it, we'd spin way faster. That would trigger winds of 300 miles per hour, total chaos with the seasons, and ocean shifts that would flood huge stretches of every inhabited continent. Your belly button has its own unique bacterial ecosystem. Scientists found over 2,300 different bacteria species across human navels, and everyone's combo is different, like a bacterial fingerprint. Some people even had bacteria previously found only in Japanese soil, despite never setting foot there. Unlike horses, zebras have a stiff, upright mane. The black and white hairs differ in thickness and length, which helps dissipate heat efficiently. Plus, standing up straight, that mane makes the zebra look bigger and tougher to predators like hyenas. The planarian worm is basically immortal. Cut it into 10 pieces, and each piece regrows a brand new head and tail, creating 10 separate worms that somehow keep the original's memories. Scientists study them to understand cell regeneration, with possible applications for human regenerative medicine down the road. The Dannebrog is the oldest national flag still in use today. Legend says it fell from the sky in the year 1219 during a battle in Estonia to rally Danish troops. Here's the weird part. Danish law bans burning other countries' flags, but there's no law against burning your own. The helmeted hornbill has a solid lump of keratin on its head so dense it's called red ivory. Unlike most birds with hollow bones, this one uses that solid mass to slam into rival males mid-flight in brutal, spectacular aerial battles. Mosquitoes don't bite randomly, they have favorites. They're drawn especially to people with blood type O and anyone breathing out more carbon dioxide. Bigger people, or anyone who just finished exercising, become way more tempting targets for these little pests. The leopard is pound for pound the strongest cat in Africa. It can take down an antelope 3 times its own weight. And here's the crazy part. Drag it straight up a vertical tree trunk 20 feet high, so lions and hyenas can't steal the kill. When a warthog gets spooked and bolts, its tail shoots straight up like a remote control car antenna. Their piglets are so small they can't see anything over the tall savanna grass, so that raised tail becomes a visual flag they follow to stay close to mom. Your car's headrest has a misleading name. It's not for resting, it's a critical safety feature designed to prevent whiplash. In a rear-end collision, your head snaps backward with brutal force. If the top of the headrest isn't lined up with the top of your head, it does basically nothing. When a freediver descends past 300 feet, the pressure should crush their lungs. But the body has a hidden superpower. It shifts blood plasma from the limbs straight into the lung cavity to fill the space and prevent collapse. On the way back up, the blood flows right back to where it belongs. Buying a glass bottle isn't always better for the planet than plastic. Glass is heavy and fragile. If that eco-friendly bottle gets shipped in from overseas by truck and boat, the carbon emissions from transport can outweigh a plastic bottle made locally in your own city. A thermos doesn't actively do anything to keep your drink hot or cold. It's just a bottle inside another bottle, separated by a vacuum. With no air molecules between the walls, heat has nowhere to escape or enter. The physics of heat transfer simply stops. Got a pimple on your nose and feel like everyone's staring? That's a psychological glitch called the spotlight effect. Your brain makes you the main character of your own life, so you wildly overestimate how much people notice you. Reality check. 90% of people are too busy worrying about themselves to even see it. Streets are packed with adult pigeons, but you never see a baby one. That's because they nest in hidden spots like rooftops and bridges, and chicks don't leave the nest for almost 30 days. By the time they hit the streets, they already look exactly like full-grown adults. Outer space is way closer than you think. The official boundary, the Kármán line, sits just 62 miles up. If you pointed your car straight up and drove at highway speed, you'd reach space in about an hour closer than some neighboring cities. Next time you open a new bottle of oil and pull off that little plastic ring on the spout, don't toss it. Flip it over and pop it back in, and it works as a perfect dosing nozzle, turning your pour into a thin, controlled stream instead of a messy splash. The Australian echidna breaks every rule of biology. It's a mammal that lays eggs, has no stomach digestion, happens straight in the intestine, and the males have a reproductive organ with 4 heads. To avoid wearing out during mating, they shut off 2 of them and alternate, like swapping spare cartridges. Modern trains use a safety system called the dead man's pedal. The conductor has to keep pressing it every few seconds. If they have a heart attack, pass out, or doze off and let go, the train's computer automatically slams the emergency brakes to prevent a catastrophic derailment. A coffee stain that dries on a table leaves a dark ring around the edges with a clear center. That's because the drop evaporates from the edges first, so water from the center rushes outward to fill the gap, dragging all the coffee particles to the rim and creating that perfect ring. Pure water has no taste at all. What you're tasting from the tap is minerals from the underground rock it passed through. Run it through limestone, it picks up calcium and magnesium for a strong mineral taste. Run it through granite, it absorbs almost nothing and tastes lighter. Add the city's chlorine on top of that. Static electricity in winter has nothing to do with cold, it's about dry air. In summer, humidity constantly drains the electrons off your skin. In winter, with no humidity, those electrons pile up on your body like a battery charging until you touch metal and they all discharge at once in a spark. 99% of Earth's gold is locked inside the planet's core. When Earth formed as a ball of liquid rock, heavy metals sank straight to the center. There's so much gold down there that if we pulled it all out, it could coat the entire planet's surface in a solid layer up to your knees. South Korea can run 24-hour stores in dark alleys, staffed by a single teenager because the crime rate is basically zero. The culture of pali pali, meaning hurry hurry, drives brutal work hours and late-night study sessions that mean the country basically never fully sleeps. Australia's Parenti monitor lizard normally walks on all fours, but when it's scared or hunting at full speed, it does something unsettling. It rears up on its hind legs, balances with its stiff tail, and sprints on two legs like a velociraptor, hitting speeds of nearly 25 miles per hour. If a commercial airplane loses all its engines at 33,000 feet, it doesn't drop like a rock. Its design lets it glide about 9 miles forward for every mile of altitude it loses. Without engines, it becomes the heaviest glider on Earth, giving pilots almost half an hour to find a safe runway. A koala's brain is completely smooth, like a chicken breast. Blame the diet. Eucalyptus is highly toxic and barely provides any calories, so evolution couldn't afford to power a complex brain. It deliberately made koalas slow and simple, just to survive on those poisonous, nutrient-poor leaves. Touch dry ice or metal at -4 degrees Fahrenheit, and your brain screams, fire. It's a neurological short circuit. When cold is extreme enough to damage tissue, your body sends the maximum pain signal. Since deadly heat and deadly cold travel down the exact same nerve, your brain confuses the signal for a burn. Riding an elephant in Thailand hides a brutal process called fajan, meaning the crushing of the spirit. A wild elephant would never let a human climb on its back. So trainers cage the baby elephant in a tiny pen, subject it to sleep deprivation and physical punishment until its spirit is completely broken. If your eyes burn by the end of the day staring at a screen, it's not blue light, it's because you stopped blinking. A normal person blinks 15 to 20 times a minute, but when your brain locks onto a screen, that rate crashes to just 3 to 5 times a minute, leaving your eyes dry. Silverback gorillas look like 450-pound killing machines, but they're surprisingly gentle mediators and babysitters. When the group's young ones get too rough or start fighting, the dominant male slowly steps in and separates them with incredible delicacy. Sometimes you'll even see several babies climbing all over his head while he just lets it happen. Street. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow isn't one church, it's 9 completely separate, independent churches built on a single stone foundation and linked by hidden passages, each crowned with its own colorful dome. What looks like one building is actually an architectural mashup of multiple structures fused together. Blueberries aren't actually blue. Their skin contains anthocyanins, which are naturally red and purple. The blue you see is a structural color. A layer of natural wax interacts with light and bounces blue wavelengths back to your eyes. Crush one open, and inside it's white or yellowish green with dark red juice. Traditional Italian pasta tastes different because it's pushed through bronze dies that tear the dough, leaving a rough, porous, matte surface. Cheap industrial pasta gets pushed through Teflon dies, leaving it smooth and shiny. That rough texture on artisanal pasta is exactly what soaks up sauce and oil like a sponge. Severe acne scars can't be erased with any cream. When a deep pimple bursts under the skin, it destroys tissue, and your body rushes collagen in to patch the hole, but it does a messy, sloppy job. That mark is rigid scar tissue pulling your skin down. Only lasers or microneedling from a dermatologist can fix it. Canary Island bananas and regular bananas aren't the same thing. Canary plantains grow in volcanic soil under subtropical climate, which means they take longer to ripen, hold less water, and pack way more starch that converts into sugar. Those famous black spots on canary bananas are natural oxidation, and they're the secret behind that intense, extreme sweetness. Sourdough bread is literally alive. It's not a type of flour, it's an ecosystem of lactobacillus bacteria and wild yeast that you have to feed with flour and water regularly, or it dies. These bacteria pre-digest the carbs and break down most of the gluten before baking, making sourdough way easier on your stomach than industrial bread. Ostriches don't bury their heads in the ground. If they did, they'd suffocate. The myth started because they build shallow nest holes in the dirt, and several times a day they have to lower their heads and use their beaks to turn the eggs. From far away on the African plains, it looks like they've buried their heads in fear. There's a dark psychology phenomenon called the Ringelmann effect, or social loafing. Studies show that when one person pulls a rope alone, they give 100% effort. Put 8 people on the same rope, and each person's individual effort drops to just 49%. Before the 2019 fire, Notre Dame's roof was a marvel of medieval engineering called the Forest. It was built with over 1,300 solid oak beams cut in the 11th century, and those trees were already 3 depressions, 400 years old when they were felled. That roof literally held living wood dating back to the 9th century Carolingian era. Owls fly in total silence. One could pass an inch from your ear and you wouldn't hear a thing. Their feathers have microscopic fringes on the edges that act like a built-in silencer, breaking up turbulent airflow into tiny, inaudible streams. That's how they dive on a mouse in total darkness without making a sound. The Roman Colosseum wasn't an open-air stadium where the crowd baked in the sun. The Romans built a massive retractable awning system called the velarium. To operate it, the Roman Empire brought in hundreds of skilled sailors from the Navy who climbed the stands pulling ropes and pulleys to adjust the canopy based on the sun's position. In winter, cats and weasels seek out the residual heat from a freshly parked car's engine block, crawling into the engine bay because it's a dark, enclosed box that shields them from freezing wind and predators. That's why you should always tap on the hood before starting your car on cold days. Tangrams are an ancient Chinese puzzle that looks simple, just 7 geometric pieces. But computers have calculated that those 7 pieces can form over 6,500 different recognizable shapes. People, ships, animals. It's a perfect lesson that creativity doesn't need endless materials, just smart spatial thinking. Madrid's Puerta de Alcalá has 2 completely different faces. King Charles III commissioned architect Sabatini, who presented 2 different design sketches. The king loved both and couldn't pick one, so Sabatini, not wanting to disappoint him, built a different design on each side, one facing front, one facing back. Some modern cities are literally built on top of older ones. It wasn't because they sank, it was garbage and flooding. In places like Seattle or Rome, the old streets constantly flooded with mud and sewage. The fix was to build walls, dump in dirt, and create a new street 1 level up, leaving the original streets as underground tunnels you can tour today. When a large plane lands, its wingtips create 2 invisible horizontal tornadoes in the air called wake turbulence. If a small plane lands too soon behind it, that invisible vortex could flip it upside down onto the runway. That's why airports enforce very specific spacing between consecutive landings. Ants have no boss telling them where to go. They run on chemical math. The first ant wanders randomly until it finds food, then leaves a pheromone trail on the way back. The shorter and straighter the path, the faster ants travel it, laying down even more pheromones. The shortest route automatically becomes the most marked, pulling the entire colony into a perfect line. Those tiny black dots around your windshield's edges serve 2 crucial jobs. First, they hide the adhesive that bonds the glass to the frame, so sunlight doesn't melt it. Second, the black metal frame heats up way more than the clear glass, and those dots create a visual gradient that spreads the heat gradually, preventing the glass from cracking. A female red-necked wallaby can carry 3 babies at totally different stages at once. A paused embryo in her uterus, a bean-sized joey in her pouch, and a bigger joey that hops out but still pops its head back in to nurse. On top of that, she produces 2 different types of milk from separate nipples, one for each baby. The leatherback sea turtle is the largest sea turtle on Earth and can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. Open its mouth, and its entire throat and esophagus are lined with hundreds of backward-facing spines called papillae. These let it swallow venomous jellyfish without letting them slip back out while it's eating in the open ocean. Modern trains don't make that classic clack-clack sound because their rails are continuous welded steel with no joints. To stop summer heat from expanding the metal and derailing the train, construction crews use hydraulic machines to physically stretch the steel rails before bolting them down, leaving them under permanent maximum tension for their entire lifespan. Anteaters have no teeth, but their tongue can stretch nearly 2 feet long. It's anchored to the breastbone, not the throat like in other animals. It can dart in and out of their mouth up to 160 times per minute, coated in saliva so sticky it traps thousands of ants in seconds. Mercury is the planet of extremes. During the day, temperatures soar to over 800 degrees Fahrenheit. But with no atmosphere to trap that heat, nighttime temperatures crash to around minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the most violent temperature swing of any planet in our entire solar system. Those concrete bollards on sidewalks are designed to snap at the base if a car hits them. That's not a weakness, it's deliberate safety engineering. If the bollard were unbreakable, the car would stop dead instantly, and the impact could kill the driver. So they're built to absorb the energy in a controlled, gradual way. Train wheels aren't straight cylinders, they're cone-shaped. That slight taper is what lets a train take curves smoothly without needing any differential. On a curve, the outer wheel automatically rolls on the wider part of the cone, covering more distance than the inner wheel, correcting the train's path completely on its own. The bar-headed goose can fly over Mount Everest at altitudes above 29,000 feet. At that height, there's so little oxygen, a human would die within minutes. But these geese have special hemoglobin that grabs oxygen with incredible efficiency, plus capillaries in their muscles that don't freeze even at 40 below zero. Code 7500 is what a pilot enters into the plane's transponder if it's being hijacked. Once activated, there's no need to speak on the radio or explain anything. Air traffic control instantly gets a silent red alert, and every radar in the area immediately knows there's a top-level security emergency. Vending machine chocolate has a slightly higher melting point than artisanal chocolate. Specific emulsifiers are added so the bar doesn't turn to mush if the machine sits in direct sunlight or the room heats up in summer, keeping it solid and rigid right up until the moment it hits your mouth. Wildfire planes drop bright red fire retardant for a reason. That color comes from iron oxide dye, which helps pilots visually track exactly where previous drops landed so they don't leave gaps for the fire to slip through. As a bonus, that same compound acts as fertilizer for the soil once the fire's out. Forensic teams use luminol to detect invisible blood traces, but here's the catch. It also glows when it touches horseradish or certain bleaches. So a scene that lights up under luminol doesn't automatically confirm a crime. It needs an additional specific test to confirm real human hemoglobin. Stop signs have that unique octagon shape worldwide for one clever reason. If snow piles up so heavily it covers the entire sign and text, drivers can still recognize it just by its silhouette from behind or the side. That keeps people from blowing through a dangerous intersection just because visibility went to zero. The wolverine is small but so ferociously tough it can scare off a wolf pack or even chase a bear away from its kill. Its claws and teeth are built to crush frozen meat and bones like crackers, letting it survive in the Arctic by eating whatever other predators leave behind because it's too tough for them. Nutmeg is harmless in small amounts, but if a person downs a couple of heaping tablespoons at once, the myristicin inside acts as a powerful neurotoxin and hallucinogen. It can cause a racing heart, seizures, and a brutal hangover lasting days. It's literally a natural pesticide the plant makes to keep animals from eating it. The Goliath bird eater eats birds and is the heaviest spider on Earth, about the size of a large dinner plate. It doesn't spin webs to catch bugs, it hides in mud and ambushes mice, frogs, and even small birds. Its fangs are over an inch long and tough enough to pierce a human skull, though its venom isn't deadly to people. On commercial planes, above the middle windows, there are small stickers with black triangles. They mark the seat with the best view of the wing flaps. If electronic sensors fail, flight attendants head straight to that window to visually confirm with their own eyes that the wing mechanics are working properly mid-flight. In Gryfino, Poland, there's a forest where about 400 pine trees bend at a perfect 90-degree angle toward the north at their base, before growing straight up again. Nobody knows for sure why. Some blame World War II tanks crushing the saplings. Others think farmers in the 1930s bent them on purpose. Turbine planes are exponentially safer than propeller planes. A piston engine has hundreds of parts rubbing against each other, multiplying the chances of failure. A turbine jet engine is mechanically much simpler. One continuous shaft spinning in a single direction. Less wear and tear means they can fly for decades without a mechanical failure. Bike helmets are designed to break. They're made of expanded polystyrene, and its entire job is to crush and shatter on impact. In the milliseconds of hitting pavement, that foam absorbs the brutal kinetic energy, stretching out your head's stopping time by critical milliseconds that can mean the difference between life and a fatal brain hemorrhage. The Australian emu and the kangaroo share a fascinating biomechanical quirk. Anatomically, neither can walk backward. Their knee and hip joints are mechanically locked to move in only one direction forward. That's exactly why both animals appear on Australia's official coat of arms, symbolizing a nation that only moves forward, never back. Saturation divers have one of the most extreme and highest-paid civilian jobs on Earth, earning over $1,000 a day. They repair oil rigs hundreds of feet underwater, and to avoid days of decompression every time, they live for weeks inside a pressurized underwater capsule, basically living at the bottom of the sea. If you break your left leg, instinct says, put the crutch under your left arm. That's biomechanically wrong. The crutch goes under your right arm the opposite side from the injury because humans naturally walk with a crossed pendulum motion. When your left foot steps forward, your right arm swings forward too. Salt doesn't just season food, it's a chemical modulator. A pinch of it physically blocks the bitterness receptors on your tongue, making food's natural sweetness pop twice as much. Salt also breaks down food molecules, releasing volatile compounds into the air, which makes food smell and taste way more intense. Fighting bulls have a massive hump of pure muscle at the base of their neck called the morillo. It powers their charge and lets them lift heavy objects with their horns. During a bullfight, the picador's lances specifically target the ligaments in that hump, forcing the bull to lower its head. That bottle labeled just olive oil or light olive oil at the supermarket is actually defective oil that tasted rancid. Factories refine it with high heat and chemicals to strip out the bad taste and smell, then add back just 10% extra virgin to restore some color and flavor so they can sell it. Only extra virgin is the real deal. Manatees have a dental phenomenon called polyphyodonty. Eating sandy river plants wears their teeth down fast, so their molars constantly grow in at the back of the jaw and shift forward millimeter by millimeter, like a factory conveyor belt. When they reach the front, they simply fall out and get replaced by the next ones in line. The cougar is the fourth largest cat in the world and can weigh over 200 pounds. But because of the bone structure in its throat, its hyoid bone isn't flexible enough, making it anatomically impossible for it to roar like a lion or tiger. Instead, it purrs like a house cat, and when it wants to communicate over distance, it lets out a scream that sounds exactly like a human screaming. According to the World Bank and IMF, Burundi in East Africa is the poorest country on Earth, with a GDP per capita of roughly $250 a year. Over 80% of its population survives on basic subsistence farming on tiny plots of land, with almost no industrial infrastructure after decades of devastating civil wars. If every bacteria on Earth magically vanished right now, we'd be dead within days. Your stomach would instantly stop digesting food. Even worse, the nitrogen cycle would completely collapse. Soil bacteria are the only thing that converts nitrogen from the air into nutrients plants can use without them. Every plant on the planet would wither fast. To play 80% of the world's pop songs, you only need to master 4 basic guitar chords. A complete beginner with zero musical ear can get there with 20 to 40 hours of focused practice. The real barrier isn't mental, it's physical. You have to push through fingertip pain until the protective callus forms, and that changes everything. Close your mouth, pinch your nose with 2 fingers, and try humming any song. It's anatomically impossible to keep going for more than half a second. You'll only get a brief sound out before air fills your mouth completely. Your vocal cords need a continuous escape route through your nasal passages to produce sustained, audible sound. The giant isopod looks like a pill bug the size of a small dog, growing up to 2.5 feet long. It lives on the dark, cold ocean floor. Its metabolism is so slow and efficient that one specimen kept in captivity in Japan survived a full 5 years without eating a single bite before finally starving. The megamouth shark is a massive 16-foot shark discovered purely by accident in 1976. In the dark ocean depths, the inside of its enormous mouth has a glowing bioluminescent strip. Small fish and plankton see the light, swim curiously toward it, and end up straight in its stomach without realizing it. On Miyake-jima Island in Japan, there's an active volcano constantly leaking deadly sulfur gas. The residents refuse to leave the island, so by law, the government requires everyone to carry a gas mask at all times. When the island's sirens go off, everyone has to put it on immediately or risk suffocating right there in the street. Crocodiles swallow large, heavy stones called gastroliths that sit in their stomachs. It works exactly like a submarine's ballast. The extra weight lets them sink effortlessly underwater, leaving only their eyes and nostrils above the surface for a perfectly silent, undetectable ambush on their prey. The harpy eagle has talons up to 5 inches long, bigger and thicker than a grizzly bear's claws. They generate so much crushing force they can crack the skull of an adult sloth or howler monkey in just seconds. It's one of the deadliest and most powerful birds of prey on the entire planet. There are foldable houses that go from a compact block to a fully functional home in just minutes. No giant cranes, no complex traditional construction. They're built for emergencies, mobility, or places where putting up a normal house would be tough. A sea slug has scientists stunned with an incredible ability. It can detach its own body and regenerate it almost entirely from the head. Sounds impossible, but it's a real survival strategy. The process lets it shed compromised body parts and keep on living. Sometimes nature solves problems in ways that would feel over the top in a movie. Scientists discovered a prehistoric shark whose teeth looked just like the ships from the video game Galaga. They leaned into the coincidence and named it after the game. It's one of those rare moments where pop culture sneaks its way into science. Turns out even fossils can be gamers. Some volcanoes don't spit lava, they spit mud. These mud volcanoes form when underground gases push water, dirt, and minerals up to the surface. They might look harmless at first glance, but some can be violent and dangerous. Turns out the Earth doesn't just spit fire, sometimes it boils mud. In several Asian countries, plenty of people skip deodorant entirely, and it's genetic. A widespread mutation means their bodies produce far fewer odor-causing compounds. That single gene shapes daily habits and even shifts the entire cosmetics market. Proof that biology can quietly rewrite culture. The Bedlington Terrier looks more like a tiny sheep than a dog. Its curly coat, slim body, and unique face make it look like a costume come to life. But underneath that adorable look is a strong, protective animal. Looks can be seriously deceiving. Look at a single drop of seawater under a microscope, and you'll find an entire universe. Larvae, eggs, tiny crustaceans, algae, and microorganisms all packed into that microscopic space. That invisible life supports a huge chunk of the ocean's food chain. The ocean isn't just massive, it's full of hidden tiny worlds. Chapultepec Castle in Mexico has a remarkable claim to fame. It's the only castle in the Americas that ever served as a royal residence. It also doubled as a military school, an observatory, and the presidential headquarters before becoming a museum. One building, that many transformations, and it never lost its grandeur. Google once used camels to capture map imagery in a desert where cars just didn't work. They strapped special cameras onto the camels and captured the landscape while respecting the local environment and culture. A brilliant solution precisely because it felt so old school. Facebook has a hidden setting that switches the entire interface to pirate language. Suddenly your friends become crewmates and every button talks like a buccaneer. It started as an internal joke, but people loved it so much they kept it. A little hidden humor inside a massive platform. Apollo astronaut Alan Shepard did something wild on the moon. He played golf. He smuggled a club head, attached it to a tool, and took a few swings on the lunar surface. Thanks to the low gravity, one of his shots traveled an insane distance, probably the longest golf shot in human history. In South Korea, some people actually pay money to lock themselves up in fake prisons, not as punishment as an escape from work, stress, and the exhausting pace of modern life. No phones, no distractions, just silence and reflection. A shipment of rubber ducks fell into the ocean and ended up helping science. Over the years, those toys washed up on shores thousands of miles apart. Researchers used their journeys to map global ocean currents. A shipping accident turned into an oceanography experiment. Real cinnamon isn't made the way most people think. It comes from the inner bark of a tree, harvested with a careful technique that doesn't kill it. That bark then curls up on its own into the sticks you recognize. Behind an everyday spice is a centuries-old craft. The blue dragon is a tiny, gorgeous sea slug, and it's dangerous. It floats upside down and steals toxins from the jellyfish it eats for its own defense. Those vivid colors aren't just pretty, they're a warning sign. Elegance, venom, and strategy, all in one tiny creature. Maryland's official state sport isn't football or baseball, it's a medieval competition of knights jousting with lances. Sounds ancient, but it's still practiced today with modern rules and serious tradition. Competitors need precision, control, and nerve. Sometimes the past doesn't disappear, it just gets an update. There's a shoe that doubles as a phone. Sounds like a cartoon gag, but it was a real working device. One of those inventions where you don't know whether to admire it or question it. Technology takes some very strange detours. Some caterpillars defend themselves by puffing up parts of their body to look like venomous snakes. They're not attacking, they're bluffing predators with a scary disguise. Later, they turn into completely harmless moths. Metamorphosis doesn't just change their shape, it changes their survival tricks too. That classic white soccer ball with black pentagons was designed to show up better on black and white TVs. The pattern made it easier to track the ball during matches. Over time, it became a universal symbol of soccer itself, a technical fix that turned into a global icon. Those little side holes on Converse sneakers? Most people think they're just decoration, but they actually serve real purposes. They help ventilate your feet and let you lace them up in different ways. A small design detail that's more useful than it looks. New tech is letting people touch holograms, no special gloves required. Using ultrasound and sensors, it creates pressure in the air to simulate textures and invisible buttons. The sensation isn't just visual, it's physical. A huge leap for future interfaces, medicine, and augmented reality. Some smartwatches might be able to guess your password just by analyzing how your hand moves while you type it. Algorithms can translate those tiny gestures into numbers or patterns. A pretty unsettling reminder of how much your body gives away without you knowing. Not every tech breakthrough is comforting. In Ghana, a teacher taught computer science by drawing entire software interfaces on a chalkboard. He had no computers, just an enormous amount of dedication. His story went viral and ended up bringing real help to his school. Proof that great teaching depends on heart, not just resources. MRI machines are way more dangerous than they look if you walk in with metal objects. Their magnets are so powerful they can turn a chair or even a tank into a flying projectile. That's why you have to remove jewelry, piercings, and anything metal before getting scanned. A quiet room hiding a brutal, invisible force. Smart vacuums don't just clean, they collect a ton of data about your home as they go. By mapping rooms, furniture, and objects, they generate insights into your habits and lifestyle. That raises some serious privacy questions inside your own house. Sometimes the sneakiest spy looks like a household appliance. Niagara Falls can look completely frozen during extreme cold snaps, but the water is actually still flowing underneath massive sheets of ice. The result is stunning, like time stopped mid-waterfall. Natural ice sculptures, white walls, an almost otherworldly scene. One of those moments where nature pulls off its own special effects. There's a town in Nebraska with exactly one resident. That single person is the mayor, the librarian, the tax collector, and the caretaker all at once. Her story is a strange mix of loneliness, resilience, and love for home. A whole town held up by one person gives community a whole new meaning. Nikola Tesla, beyond being an electrical genius, had a surprisingly soft spot for pigeons. He used to care for injured birds and once spent serious money nursing one he considered especially important. That tender side is a sharp contrast to his cold, brilliant inventor image. Even history's biggest names hide unexpected soft spots. The velociraptors in Jurassic Park weren't exactly accurate. The real ones were much smaller, closer to the size of a large bird than the movie monster. The design was actually based more on a bigger dinosaur. Hollywood chose scares over scientific accuracy, and it paid off big time. There was a time when the Olympics didn't just award medals for sports, they awarded them for art too. Categories like painting, architecture, music, and literature all had medals, as long as the work was inspired by sports. Eventually that disappeared, but for several editions, artists competed right alongside athletes. One of history's strangest footnotes that almost nobody remembers. Domino's once launched a campaign to fix potholes in city streets. It wasn't pure charity, it was practical. Those potholes were ruining pizzas during delivery. So they decided to fix the problem straight in the asphalt. Not every fast food chain gets into road infrastructure just to keep your pizza intact. There's a rescue drone that can spot people using thermal vision, fly without GPS, and even smash through windows if it needs to get into a tough spot. It can even right itself if it falls. Part emergency tool, part mechanical superhero. A drone that doesn't just watch, it acts. Back in 1998, there was already a device called the iPhone with zero connection to Apple. It had a touchscreen and internet features years before the phone that changed everything. It never took off and never stuck in people's memory, but it proves some ideas just arrive too early. History tends to remember the one who perfects it, not the one who got there first. A creator actually built a working bicycle with triangular wheels. The trick is an internal system that lets the corners shift smoothly to create continuous motion. At first glance, it looks impossible to ride. But once it's moving, it proves even the most basic shapes can be re-engineered with enough clever design. In Central America, there's a white bat that looks like a winged stuffed animal. Yellow face, big ears, and it hides under leaves it shapes into its own little shelter. It looks so cute and bizarre, it seems like something out of a kid's cartoon. But it's completely real and one of the most charming examples of tropical biodiversity. A museum in Queens holds a massive-scale model of New York City with hundreds of thousands of tiny buildings. Walking past it feels like wandering through a miniature city as a giant. It was built for a World's Fair and still amazes people with its scale and detail. A physical map so huge it almost feels like a city inside the city. In Istanbul, engineers tested turbines that capture the airflow created by passing traffic. That wind, normally wasted, can be converted into electricity for street lighting. A brilliant idea because it uses motion that already exists and turns it into useful energy. Innovation doesn't always mean creating something new. Sometimes it just means noticing what's already there. A seal was spotted with an unusual reddish coat and bright blue eyes, looking almost otherworldly. That genetic difference makes it one of a kind, but it can also make it harder to fit in with the group. In nature, standing out isn't always an advantage. Sometimes the extraordinary comes with isolation. Some sharks lay eggs shaped like spirals or corkscrews. That shape helps them snag onto rocks or coral so they don't get swept away by currents. Inside the capsule, the embryo grows protected until it's ready to swim out. Even underwater, eggs can look like tiny pieces of smart design. Kanzi, a famous bonobo, was raised in an environment where humans communicated with him using symbols. Over time, he learned to understand hundreds of words and even complex instructions. This wasn't just mimicry, he was actually processing what was being asked of him. His case completely changed how we think about intelligence. China built an experimental nuclear fusion reactor capable of reaching temperatures far hotter than the sun's core. The goal is clean energy through a process that doesn't leave behind dangerous waste like traditional fission. It's still in development, but the potential is massive. Basically, taming a tiny sun inside a lab. America's first satellite, Explorer 1, launched on January 31, 1958. It was roughly twice the size of a basketball and weighed just 30 pounds, yet it managed to discover the radiation belts surrounding Earth. Buy a new car in Denmark and brace yourself. The registration tax can exceed 100% of the vehicle's price. It once hit 180%, though it's been slowly dropping since 2016, especially for electric vehicles. The word salamander comes from the Greek for fire lizard. Ancient people watched them sprint out of logs thrown into fires, not knowing the animals had been living inside the damp wood and were simply escaping the heat. A myth was born. Australia's first police force was made up of the best-behaved convicts in the penal colonies. These men, called constables, were chosen for good conduct and put on patrol duty. Over time, that improvised system grew into a proper, organized police force. A skunk can spray you from up to 10 feet away. The sulfur-based compounds in that spray cling to clothes and surfaces for days. But here's the thing, they warn you first. Stomping feet, raised tail, you have time to run. Most people just don't. Billiard tables are green because the game started outside on grass. When it moved indoors, players used green felt on wood to recreate the feel of a lawn. The materials changed over centuries. The color never did. Galileo's middle finger is on permanent display at the Galileo Museum in Florence, Italy. It's been preserved in a way that keeps it pointing forever in the general direction of the church that censored him, destroyed his reputation, put him under house arrest, and denied him a proper burial for decades. Flying squirrels can't actually fly, but they can glide up to nearly 300 feet using a thin membrane of skin stretched between their legs. They steer with their tail like a rudder, adjusting direction and sticking the landing. The northern pseudoscorpion, living in Canada's Yukon Territory, can survive without breathing for 17 days. It drops into an ultra-low metabolism state to endure extreme cold and oxygen deprivation. It's also a tiny predator hunting mites and small invertebrates. Small but ruthless. In 2000, someone paid real money on eBay for the leftover French toast. Justin Timberlake didn't finish during a New York radio breakfast interview. The DJ listed it, The internet did the rest. One of history's most absurd auctions, and somehow not the last. The peregrine falcon is the fastest animal on Earth. In a dive, it hits speeds of nearly 200 miles per hour, adjusting its wings and body mid-air. Under the cobblestone streets of Bruges, Belgium, there's a pipeline pumping over 1,000 gallons of beer per hour. It runs from a brewery in the medieval city center all the way to a bottling plant on the outskirts. The whole thing runs underground, out of sight. Elephant tusks can weigh up to 200 pounds and grow up to 10 feet long. They're actually elongated upper incisors made of ivory that never stop growing. Elephants use them to dig, carry, fight, and forage, a built-in multi-tool. The world record for longest chicken flight is 13 seconds. Their short wings and heavy bodies make sustained flight basically impossible. What they do is more of a powered leap, enough to escape a predator, not enough to go anywhere interesting. Brian May is one of the greatest rock guitarists of all time. He's also an astrophysicist. After 3 decades away from academia, he went back to school in 2007 and finally completed his PhD. The universe is lucky to have him twice. Cows have over 800 blood types. Humans have 4 main ones. This staggering genetic diversity in bovine blood systems makes them invaluable in veterinary research and breeding programs, and makes our own biology look pretty simple by comparison. The mako shark is the fastest shark in the ocean, clocking in at up to 60 miles per hour. The average shark swims at 1.5. That's not a small gap, that's practically a different species entirely. The hairy frog of Africa hides a weapon inside its own body, retractable bone claws that literally pierce through its skin when threatened. Not nails, bones, punching through flesh on command. Scientists have nicknamed it the Wolverine frog, rightfully so. The United Kingdom is the only country in the world that doesn't put its name on its postage stamps. Instead, every stamp features the monarch's profile. The tradition goes back to the world's first stamp, the penny black, issued in 1840 and has never been broken since. Insects don't breathe through lungs. Oxygen enters their bodies through tiny holes called spiracles and travels directly to cells through air-filled tubes called tracheae, no blood required. Some species can even seal their spiracles shut to conserve water. In the 17th century, criminals would shave the edges off gold and silver coins to sell the metal shavings. The mince solution? Add ridges around the edge, a process called reeding. Coins haven't contained precious metals for a long time, but the ridges are still there. Over 1,000 elephants were used to haul the materials for the Taj Mahal. Massive marble blocks, heavy stone moved across enormous distances on the backs of these animals. Construction began in 1632 and took more than 20 years to finish. Capri pants are named after the island of Capri in the Gulf of Naples, Italy. They exploded in popularity in the 1950s when European designers brought them into women's fashion. Then Audrey Hepburn wore them, and the rest is style history. Moon dust smells like gunpowder. Astronauts didn't notice it in space, they only caught the scent when they returned to the lunar module, and the dust clinging to their suits hit the cabin air. Strange, metallic, and completely unexpected. Sea anemones can clone themselves. Through a process called fission, one anemone simply splits into 2 genetically identical individuals. They also regenerate damaged body parts, resilient, self-replicating, and quietly fascinating. President James Garfield served less than 4 months before being shot. Here's the twist. The bullet didn't kill him. It missed every vital organ. What killed him were the infections caused by doctors repeatedly probing the wound with unwashed hands and unsterilized instruments. In Chichibu, Japan, there's a museum called Shinsekikan, the Hall of Curious Rocks, housing nearly 2,000 stones that naturally resemble human faces. Most are completely unaltered. Nature just made them that way. People travel from around the world to see rocks that look like people. Great Smoky Mountains National Park sits on the border of North Carolina and Tennessee. It receives over 12 million visitors a year, more than the Grand Canyon. Its signature blue haze comes from organic compounds released by the trees themselves. The park literally makes its own atmosphere. Swedish blogger Dagny Carlson took a computer course at 99 years old and started writing online. She became one of the oldest bloggers in the world, winning fans with her sharp wit and no-nonsense style. She kept writing until the end. She died in 2022. Rhode Island's full official name used to be Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. Voters chose to keep it in 2010. Then in 2020, they voted again, and this time it was gone. Just Rhode Island. In Japan, macaque monkeys have been documented riding deer like horses. Researchers have filmed it. The monkeys do it for fun and sometimes groom the deer mid-ride. Nobody trained them, they just figured it out. In 2014, a massive underground city was discovered in Cappadocia, Turkey. It's the size of 65 football fields and once housed around 20,000 people, complete with churches, water channels, kitchens, wine cellars, and oil presses. All of it underground. North Korea's national animal is the chalama, a mythical winged horse symbolizing speed, endurance, and progress. It appears on monuments and state propaganda and gave its name to a mid-century campaign to rally the population. A nation built around a flying horse that doesn't exist. You can drink too much water. It's called overhydration, and it causes nausea, vomiting, headaches, and mental confusion. Too much liquid dilutes the electrolytes in your body, and the results can be deadly. More water isn't always better. The albatross sleeps while flying. It glides on ocean air currents with almost zero effort, covering enormous distances without touching land for days. It takes quick rests mid-flight to avoid predators below. A bird that lives almost entirely in the air. There are now over 300 known moons in our solar system, and the number keeps growing. Most orbit giant planets like Saturn and Jupiter. Many are tiny, irregular bodies captured by gravity. New ones are discovered regularly, named after mythological figures, thanks to increasingly powerful telescopes. The world's largest ketchup bottle stands nearly 69 feet tall, perched on top of a 100-foot steel tower in Collinsville, Illinois. It's the old water tower from the Brooks ketchup plant. The town throws a festival for it every year, as they should. Llamas can carry up to 75 pounds across 20 miles. Push them beyond that, and they simply lie down and refuse to move. Then they spit at you until you lighten the load. They've been the backbone of Andean transport for centuries, and they know their limits. Frank Zappa had a quilt made entirely from unwashed underwear that women threw onto his stage during concerts. It was one of his most talked about eccentricities, and perfectly on brand for a man who built a career on provocation, dark humor, and refusing to be normal. It is illegal to wrestle a bear in Alabama. The law exists to ban the cruel spectacle shows where wild animals were used for entertainment. Apparently enough people tried it to make a law necessary. Chickens use their combs and wattles those red fleshy bits on their heads as built-in air conditioning. Blood flows from their bodies into these exposed areas, releasing heat into the air. It's an elegant little cooling system hidden in plain sight. A baby echidna, or platypus, is called a puggle. Both animals are monotremes, one of the rarest groups of mammals on Earth, the ones that lay eggs instead of giving birth. When puggles hatch, they're tiny, and they drink milk that seeps directly through their mother's skin. No nipples, just milk through skin. Hockey pucks were originally made from frozen cow dung. It broke apart easily and decomposed, so it wasn't exactly ideal. Eventually, players switched to wooden pucks, then vulcanized rubber, the hard, consistent disc used today. Progress is a beautiful thing. In the village of Al-Alaj, near Bethlehem, Palestine, there's an olive tree over 4,000 years old. It stands 39 feet tall with a trunk 82 feet around, roughly the size of 10 normal olive trees combined, and it's still alive. Earwax isn't actually wax. The technical term is cerumen, and it's mostly shed skin cells, about 60% keratin, up to 20% long-chain fatty acids, and around 9% cholesterol. Your ears are essentially self-cleaning machines running on dead skin. The city of Kiruna, Sweden, is slowly sinking, undermined by a massive iron ore mine beneath it. The solution? Move the entire city. Historic buildings have been relocated or rebuilt. New neighborhoods have been developed miles away. A whole city picked up and shifted. The male giant peacock moth can detect a female's pheromones from miles away. His feathery antennae are so finely tuned they can pick up the faintest chemical trace drifting through the night air. He locks onto the signal and flies straight to her, guided by something completely invisible to everything else. During the writer's strike of 2007, David Letterman paid his late show staff out of his own pocket while the show was on pause. Nobody asked him to, he just did it. In an industry not exactly known for generosity, that move made him a legend. The longest engagement ever recorded lasted 67 years. Octavio Guillen and Adriana Martinez finally tied the knot in June of 1969 in Mexico City, both 82 years old. Why did they wait so long? Nobody knows. They never really explained it. Pistachios used to be dyed red. The red food coloring was applied to hide shell imperfections from processing, but it didn't hold up well. Moisture transferred the dye straight to people's mouths. Eventually, someone decided that was a problem. The dye disappeared, the pistachio survived. Lions and jaguars react to catnip exactly like your house cat, rolling, sniffing, licking, rubbing themselves against it. It's triggered by a compound called nepotalactone. Not every big cat responds, but the ones that do, fully checked out for several minutes. Apex predators, completely undone by a plant. About 46 million turkeys are eaten every Thanksgiving in the United States. One day, 46 million birds. It's one of the single biggest food consumption events in the country, and it happens every year without anyone blinking. The original Three Musketeers bar wasn't one bar, it was three. Invented in 1932 by Mars, it came as three mini bars: chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry nougat. That's exactly where the name came from. The Alexandre Dumas connection was purely intentional. Darth Vader is one of the most iconic villains in movie history. He's also on screen for only 12 minutes in Star Wars Episode 4. 12 minutes. The entire character's menace was built almost entirely off-screen. That's some of the most efficient villain work ever put to film. On September 4th, 2016, Pope Francis officially canonized Mother Teresa, declaring her Saint Teresa of Calcutta. It happened nearly 20 years after her death in 1997, following a lengthy process that confirmed her humanitarian legacy. In ancient Rome, only free citizens could wear a toga. Foreigners and exiles were banned from wearing one in public, and the style of toga you wore signaled your social rank. Politicians running for office wore the toga candida, brilliant white. That word, candida, is where we get the word candidate. The Welwitschia plant, growing in the Namib Desert, can live for over 1,000 years. Some currently alive have been carbon dated to 1,500 years old. It survives in one of the driest environments on Earth, barely doing anything, just quietly outliving everything around it. The fur growing inside a cat's ears is called ear furnishings. It blocks dust, dirt, and insects from entering the ear canal. It also helps cats pick up on subtle vibrations and sounds, a small but essential part of what makes their hearing so incredibly sharp. In the 1948 U.S. presidential election, the Chicago Daily Tribune printed its front page early and got it catastrophically wrong. Dewey defeats Truman. Truman had won, The photo of him holding up that newspaper became one of the most iconic images in American political history. The only underwater post office in the world is at Hideaway Island Resort in Port Vila, Vanuatu. Snorkelers and divers can send waterproof postcards from about 10 feet below the surface. It's as absurd as it sounds and completely real. In Sweden, you can spend the night inside a converted Boeing 747. The Jumbo Stay Hotel has 33 rooms about 20 feet wide and 10 feet floor to ceiling, each with a flat-screen TV, Wi-Fi, and private or shared bathrooms. The cockpit suite has a view that's hard to beat. Before Yesterday had lyrics, Paul McCartney woke up with the melody stuck in his head. To keep it alive while he worked on the real words, he walked around singing, "Scrambled eggs, oh my baby, how I love your legs." He hummed that placeholder for weeks. The actual song came much later. Antonio López de Santa Anna was president of Mexico 11 times. Between 1833 and 1855, he kept entering and exiting power in a revolving door of political and military chaos that shaped the country's entire early history, 11 times. Maine was once the toothpick capital of the world. Through the 19th century and well into the 20th, the state produced the vast majority of wooden toothpicks in the U.S., thanks to its abundant birch forests. The industry eventually faded, the birch trees remained. Smelling isopropyl alcohol can stop nausea fast. 3 or 4 deep inhales of the compound reduces nausea and vomiting. The discovery came from nursing researchers at Swingley Mission Medical Center in Kansas, and it's become one of the most surprisingly effective quick remedies out there. Female giant pandas almost always give birth to 2 cubs, but they typically only raise 1. Caring for 2 at once takes more energy than they can spare. In conservation centers, keepers quietly swap the cubs back and forth so both get fed. The mother never realizes she's raising 2. In England, there are theme parks called Diggerland, where you drive and operate full-size bulldozers, dump trucks, and construction machinery. No license, no training required. Just you, an excavator, and a dream. Open to kids and adults alike. St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City is the largest church in the world. It stretches over 610 feet long, covers more than 163,000 square feet inside, and its main dome soars 446 feet into the air. It fits 20,000 people in prayer at once. Jupiter's Great Red Spot is a storm that has been raging for at least 150 years, possibly much longer. For most of that time, it was wide enough to swallow the entire Earth whole. It's been slowly shrinking, but it's still going. The Britannic was the Titanic's sister ship. After the Titanic sank, the Britannic was upgraded with improved safety features. Then it hit a mine during World War I and sank in 55 minutes. Every single safety improvement didn't matter. In London, there's a swimming pool suspended between 2 apartment buildings. The sides and the bottom are completely transparent. You swim through open air, staring down at London through nearly 8 inches of glass, over 100 feet above the street. Totally calm, totally terrifying. The medical term for hiccups is syngultus, involuntary diaphragm contractions, characteristic sound, usually gone in minutes. In rare cases, they can last for days or weeks and require medical intervention. There's even a world record. You don't want it. Andorra, Finland, Greenland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, and Norway all have literacy rates approaching 100%. Their governments mandate school attendance by law and invest heavily in free education through secondary level. The results speak for themselves. There's an alarm clock called the sensor wake that wakes you up with smell instead of sound. You choose your scent: fresh cut grass, warm croissant, chocolate, espresso, mint. Instead of a jarring alarm, you drift awake into something that smells like a good morning. Revolutionary, honestly. The garfish has blue-green bones. The color comes from a pigment called biliverdin the same compound that appears in other animals during the breakdown of hemoglobin. The bones look almost otherworldly, completely safe to eat, just unsettling to look at. Hawaiian Punch was invented in 1934 as an ice cream topping. Then someone mixed it with water. It was delicious. The drink became the product, and the ice cream topping was forgotten. One of history's most accidental and successful pivots. The only mounted blue whale in the world, known as the Malma whale, is on display at the Natural History Museum of Sweden. It washed ashore on October 29, 1865, near Gothenburg. It measured over 52 feet long and weighed around 55,000 pounds. When Mick Jagger was a teenager, he bit the tip of his tongue during a basketball collision. After that, he spoke and sang with a slightly different, less refined accent. That accident, without anyone realizing it at the time, helped create one of the most recognizable voices in rock history. The U.S. Capitol has its own private subway system. It's exclusively for members of Congress and Capitol staff, connecting several government buildings so lawmakers can move between them quickly. It's been running since the early 20th century and has been expanded over the years. Gene Simmons of Kiss was born on August 25, 1949, in Haifa, Israel, under the name Chaim Witz. He immigrated to the United States as a child, later adopted his stage name, and built one of the most theatrical careers in rock. The tongue, the makeup, the fire-breathing, none of it was Chaim's idea. In Boston, there's a museum called the Museum of Bad Art. It's the only museum in the world dedicated exclusively to bad art in all its forms. Sincere, failed, and gloriously misguided. Many pieces are donated or rescued from garage sales. It is a treasure. Jamie Lee Curtis invented a diaper with a built-in waterproof compartment for wet wipes. She spent years changing diapers and decided the system needed fixing. A practical problem, a practical solution. Sometimes the best inventions come from the people most annoyed by what doesn't work. In 2005, a Chinese gamer known as Snowy died of exhaustion after playing World of Warcraft for 3 straight days. More than 100 players attended a virtual memorial service held inside the game itself, the largest virtual funeral ever recorded. TACR is an acronym. It stands for Thomas A. Swift's Electric Rifle, named after the literary hero Tom Swift by inventor John Cover. He added the A just to make the acronym work. Unintentionally, but still, St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, was not Irish. His exact birthplace is unknown, but he's believed to have been born around the year 375 in Scotland. His real name was likely Muinan Sucad. He took the name Patrick when he became a priest. The Labrador Retriever has been the most popular dog in the United States for 25 consecutive years, according to the American Kennel Club. Friendly, intelligent, easy to train, great with families, invaluable in service work. 25 years. No other breed has come close. The largest gold nugget ever found was discovered on February 5, 1869, near Dunolly, Victoria, Australia. It weighed an astonishing 159 pounds and measured 2 feet by 1 foot. It was melted into gold bars and sent to the Bank of England. Elephants have a dominant tusk, just like humans have a dominant hand. They favor one tusk for digging, stripping bark, and lifting objects. The preferred tusk wears down shorter over time. The other stays longer. You can tell which side a particular elephant relies on just by looking. Soap operas are called soap operas because they were originally sponsored by soap companies. They aired during the day specifically to reach their core demographic, housewives at home. A marketing strategy ended up naming an entire genre of television permanently. In 1965, Apollo astronauts trained in Iceland because it looks more like the moon than almost anywhere else on Earth. Volcanic geology, almost no vegetation. They practiced identifying rocks and formations that matched what they'd encounter on the lunar surface. When a blue whale exhales, the spray from its blowhole can shoot nearly 30 feet into the air. It's visible from a great distance and loud enough to hear from far away. That single breath, released all at once, is one of the most powerful displays in the animal kingdom. Dr. Timothy Clark Smith of Vermont was so terrified of being buried alive that he had a glass window built into his grave. He's buried in Evergreen Cemetery with a roughly 1-foot square glass window set into his headstone. It's still there, you can go look through it. Sardine is a generic term. It doesn't refer to one specific fish, it covers several small species sealed in cans, including young herring and European sprat. Packed in oil, water, or sauce, high in nutrients, wildly misunderstood. In 2012, Costa Rica banned sport hunting, entirely one of the first countries in Latin America to do so. Violations carry prison time and heavy fines. In a country that takes its biodiversity seriously, this wasn't a surprise, it was a statement. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, there is a dog motel. Satin sheets, romantic music, heart-shaped mirrors on the ceiling. You can rent a room for your dog for 2 hours for about $50, because apparently your dog deserves a night out too. Brooks Brothers is the oldest American retail company still operating today. The first store opened on April 7, 1818, on Cherry Street in New York City under the name H&DH, Brooks & Company. Over 200 years later, it's still here. More than 180 languages and dialects are spoken in Toronto, Canada. Half the city's population was born outside the country. Toronto is widely considered the most multicultural city on the planet, and its neighborhoods, festivals, and food scene make that impossible to argue with. Cookie Monster's real name is Sid. In 2010, the character tweeted, "Me was not born with name Cookie Monster. It just nickname that stuck. Me not sure me remember real name. Maybe it was Sydney." A revelation, decades of friendship, and we never knew his name. The dark gray color you see when you're in total darkness isn't nothing. It's called Eigengrau, and it's produced by your own optical nerves firing without any external light. Pure black doesn't actually exist in human perception. Your brain is always generating something, even in the void. A chewed cigar butt smoked by Winston Churchill sold at auction for 2,000 British pounds. A nurse recovered it from his ashtray while he was recovering from a broken hip at the Middlesex Hospital in 1962. Someone paid real money for that. And honestly, why wouldn't they? In the rainforests of Yunnan, in southwest China, there's a spider that disguises itself as a hanging dead leaf. The dead leaf spider uses a technique called masquerade, mimicking an object rather than its background. It's one of the most sophisticated examples of animal camouflage ever documented. Tokyo's subway system moves 3.1 billion people every year. It runs on precision trains are famous for arriving within seconds of schedule. During peak hours, dedicated platform staff physically help push passengers into cars. 3 billion people moved on time every single year. The first baseball caps were made of straw. The New York Knickerbockers first wore them on April 24, 1849. Players gradually switched to fabric caps with longer brims to cut down on sun glare. The straw version had a short run. In 1996, Kermit the Frog delivered the commencement address at Southampton College to 245 graduates. He showed up as a special guest, gave an inspiring speech in full Kermit fashion, and left everyone feeling genuinely moved. One of the strangest commencement speeches in academic history. American Express started in 1850 as a freight and valuables delivery service. The U.S. postal system was unreliable, and someone had to fill the gap. Then they noticed their biggest profits were coming from banks and financial institutions. The rest is credit card history. On May 31, 1923, Canada passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, effectively halting Chinese immigration for nearly a quarter century. The law stayed in effect until 1947. One of the darkest chapters in Canadian immigration history. The bottom of a horse's hoof is called the frog. It's triangular, acts as a natural shock absorber, distributes weight, and actually helps pump blood back up through the leg every time it hits the ground. A built-in circulatory assist hidden under every step. The voice of Tony the Tiger Thurl Ravenscroft was also the man who sang "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" in the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas special. He wasn't credited for it. He noticed, he mentioned it, and for years almost nobody knew it was him. Breeding orcas in captivity is banned in California. Shows using killer whales purely for entertainment are also restricted. It marked a historic shift in how marine mammals are treated at aquatic parks, and it wasn't quiet when it happened. The harpy eagle, native to the tropical rainforests of Central and South America, is one of the most powerful birds of prey on Earth. It hunts sloths and monkeys. Females can carry prey weighing up to 20 pounds, and its talons are larger than the claws of a grizzly bear. Cassava, also known as yucca, naturally produces cyanide. If you don't process it correctly, it's toxic. But when prepared properly, the cyanide is completely eliminated, making it safe to eat. The tapioca pudding you've had is just well-processed cassava. Probably fine. A tomato has 25% more genes than a human being. The humble tomato carries 31,760 genes. We have around 20,000. Complexity, it turns out, has nothing to do with how many genes you're working with. In Tonopah, Nevada, there is a clown motel. It's decorated with hundreds of clowns. It sits right next to a cemetery. If you go in without a fear of clowns, there's a reasonable chance you'll leave with one. The replica bounty ship used in Pirates of the Caribbean sank off the coast of North Carolina during Hurricane Sandy in 2012. It had appeared in multiple film productions before going down, a movie ship with a genuinely tragic ending. Pope Francis released an album called Wake Up, featuring his speeches set to rock, pop, and Gregorian chant. One of very few popes to enter the contemporary music world, and arguably the most unexpected crossover in entertainment history. A study published in BMC Evolutionary Biology found that people with lower back pain have spines more similar to chimpanzees than to fully upright walkers. The implication: some of us just aren't entirely adapted for bipedal life yet. Evolution is still working on it. When Mozart was 7 years old, he proposed marriage to Marie Antoinette. He slipped on a wax floor at the Versailles court. She helped him up, and he told her he intended to marry her. She said no. He was 7, she was also 7. History moved on. The Logos Hope is the largest floating bookstore and library in the world, operated by a German charity with over 6,000 books on board. The ship travels from port to port, bringing books to communities with limited access. A floating library sailing the world. Few things are cooler than that. 1 in every 8,500 people is born with situs inversus, a condition where all the organs in the chest and abdomen are perfectly mirrored from their normal positions. Heart on the right, liver and spleen on the left, everything works, just backwards. Elvis Presley had a chimpanzee named Scatter. The king of rock and roll was well known for his love of animals, dogs, horses, birds, but Scatter was the standout. Known for mischief, he became part of the Elvis legend in ways few people remember today. The tamandua, the lesser anteater, produces a smell 4 to 7 times stronger than a skunk. You can detect it from over 160 feet away. It releases the odor when threatened. It's also an expert tree climber that hunts ants and termites. Nunavut, Canada's Northern Territory, has the lowest high school graduation rate in the country. Only 57% of students actually finish secondary school. It reflects the deep socioeconomic, geographic, and cultural challenges facing one of the most remote regions in the world. Koalas almost never drink water. Over 90% of their hydration comes from the eucalyptus leaves they eat. They only drink directly when they're sick, or the leaves don't have enough moisture during extreme dry spells. An animal that's essentially solved the water problem through diet alone. According to the Guinness World Records, Svetlana Pankratova of Russia holds the record for the longest legs on a woman. Her legs measured 4.3 feet as of July 8, 2003. One of those records that immediately makes you look down at your own legs. Richard Nixon gave up his Secret Service protection 11 years after leaving office to save the government money. The estimated savings, $3 million. A completely voluntary gesture and one of the more understated acts of an otherwise very complicated man. -40 degrees Fahrenheit and -40 degrees Celsius are exactly the same temperature. Fahrenheit built his scale using the coldest temperature he could produce as his 0 point. Celsius anchored his to water's freezing and boiling points. Neither man planned the overlap, it just happened. The Grand Hyatt Hotel uses a trained team of falcons to keep seagulls away from outdoor dining areas. The falcons patrol regularly, and their presence alone is enough to deter the opportunistic birds, no harm done to either side. Nature controlling nature. There's a company called Hangover Helpers. For a set price per person, they show up the morning after your party, bring Gatorade, cook you a homemade breakfast burrito, clean the entire space, and wash every dirty dish. The service nobody knew they needed until right now. Eyelashes have a growth cycle of only 3 months, which is why they don't get very long. Between 1 and 5 lashes fall out of your face every single day, completely normal. Happening right now, probably. Tyra Banks was the first black woman to appear on the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue in 1997. A landmark moment in both fashion and media, and one that opened the door for greater representation across the industry. You can get a university degree in surfing. Some universities, particularly in places with strong surf culture, like Australia, offer programs combining on-water practice with coursework in coastal management, water safety, environmental studies, and the business side of the surf industry. A real degree for real waves. There are 150 billion red blood cells in a single ounce of blood and 2.4 trillion in 1 pint. Under stress, the human body can produce 119 million red blood cells per second. They're made in bone marrow and live for about 120 days. 1 ounce of gold can be stretched into a wire about 56 miles long. Gold is one of the most ductile metals on Earth. It can also be hammered into sheets thin enough to let light pass through, thin enough to be useful in advanced electronics. 1 ounce. 56 miles, let that sit. The White House has its own pastry kitchen. A dedicated team prepares desserts for official events, state dinners, and celebrations. Every menu is tailored to the occasion and the guests. The residence has multiple kitchens in total, capable of scaling from an intimate dinner to a massive reception. Eating well comes with the address. Uranus has 27 moons. 5 are large, the rest are much smaller. The big 5 are Miranda, Ariel, Umbriel, Titania, and Oberon. Unlike other planets, most of Uranus's moons are named after characters from William Shakespeare and Alexander Pope. Completely unique in the solar system. Japan released black garlic-flavored Doritos as a limited Halloween edition. The bag was black with a haunted house, bats, and a Dracula illustration. Japan regularly launches flavors and limited editions the rest of the world will never see. It remains one of the great injustices of global snack distribution. 7-Up was originally called Bib Label Lithiated Lemon Lime Soda. Invented in 1929, it actually contained lithia, a substance that eventually became lithium. The drug now used to stabilize mood in people with bipolar disorder and other psychiatric conditions. Your grandpa's soda had medication in it. You can get a hair splinter just like a wood splinter. It's especially common among dog groomers and hairstylists. Cut hair dries out, gets rigid and sharp, and can embed itself in the skin of your fingers or hands. painful, oddly invisible, and more common than anyone talks about. Billy Mitchell was recognized for years as the first person to achieve a perfect score in Pac-Man, 333,360 points, on July 3, 1999. Years later, controversies emerged over some of his records that led to investigations and the removal of certain scores. Bear Grylls named his three sons Jesse, Marmaduke, and Huckleberry. Somehow, this is completely on brand for a man who drinks his own urine on television for a living. The Swiss minigun is the smallest, fully functional revolver in the world. It measures just 2.2 inches long and weighs 0.7 ounces. Completely operational. A masterpiece of miniature engineering that challenges everything you think is physically possible at that scale. According to the Guinness World Records, Verkhoyansk in Russia has the greatest temperature range of any place on Earth. Temperatures there swing from -90 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 99 degrees Fahrenheit, a range of over 189 degrees. A place where the weather can't decide what it is. Antarctica has no official time zone. Scientists living and working there typically follow the time zone of their home country. And for most of the year, the region experiences either 24 hours of continuous sunlight or 24 hours of complete darkness. Jodie Foster was 8 years old when a lion picked her up in its mouth during the filming of Napoleon and Samantha for Disney. On set, during production, she survived, kept working, and went on to become one of the most decorated actresses in Hollywood history. Witzelsucht is a real medical condition, a German term meaning joke addiction. People with certain types of brain damage develop a compulsion to tell jokes constantly without appropriate social filtering. It's linked to damage in areas of the brain that regulate impulse control and language. Not as funny as it sounds. Scientists at the University of Washington developed a way to transmit secure passwords through the human body instead of through the air. They use low-frequency transmissions generated by fingerprint sensors and touchpads on devices. Your body as the data cable. The future is strange and I'm here for it. A Serbian woman named Bojana Danilovic has a rare neurological condition that causes her to see everything upside down. She uses an inverted computer screen and keyboard at work. Her television at home is mounted upside down. She has adapted completely. Her daily life is unlike anyone else's on Earth. China designated parking spaces for women drivers that were 50% larger than standard spaces. They appeared in some shopping centers, marketed as a convenience for maneuvering. They generated immediate backlash for reinforcing stereotypes. They were quietly removed following public debate. A story with a beginning, a middle, and an ending. According to the Guinness World Records, the shortest adult in recorded history was Chandra Bahadur Dangi of Nepal, who measured just 1.79 feet tall. Despite his size, he lived an active life in his community and became an international figure when he was officially recognized and measured. In Victorian England, police officers were called crushers, a nickname that was arguably more threatening than pig and somehow less flattering. It reflected a genuine tension between law enforcement and ordinary citizens, one that wasn't exactly subtle about how people felt about being policed. The M's in M&M's stand for Mars and Murray, the surnames of the two founders. The Mars bar carries similar family history, though it was actually named by Forrest Mars, Frank Mars' son, not Frank himself. A candy dynasty hiding in plain sight on every wrapper. A violin is made from over 70 separate pieces of wood. Each one is carefully chosen and assembled to influence resonance and tone. Spruce and maple are selected for their acoustic properties. The entire construction process can take weeks or months of meticulous handwork. 70 pieces of wood and somehow it sounds like that. October 2nd is Wrongful Conviction Day, launched by organizations advocating for the unjustly imprisoned. It exists to raise awareness that justice systems fail, and that when they do, real people pay the price. a reminder that getting it wrong isn't an abstraction. Otis Redding whistled the final verse of "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay" because he hadn't finished writing the lyrics when it was recorded. He planned to come back and complete them. 3 days later, he died in a plane crash. His producer left the whistle in because he loved it. It is illegal in Atlanta, Georgia, to tie a giraffe to a telephone pole or a street lamp. Take a moment with that. Laws like this exist as artifacts of a time when apparently someone had to be told. The giraffe community of Atlanta has reportedly been compliant ever since. In High Wycombe, United Kingdom, the mayor is publicly weighed at the start and end of their term. The tradition dates back to medieval times. The idea, if the mayor gained weight, they were living too well on taxpayer money, a form of public accountability that is both ancient and deeply British. There's a marathon at the North Pole every year considered the coldest marathon on Earth. It covers the standard 26.2 miles and requires runners to layer up in thermal gear, windproof pants, and protective goggles just to survive the course. A race where finishing is the only win that matters. In 1930, artist Grant Wood painted American Gothic using his sister Nan and his dentist as models. Many people assume the two figures are a married couple. They're not. The house in the painting is real. It's still standing in Eldon, Iowa, and people still visit it. The Amazon River, which today flows west to east, used to flow in the opposite direction in prehistoric times. For a period, it briefly flowed both ways simultaneously. In 2007, a couple in Bosnia who were both unhappily married began separately searching for their soulmates online. They each found a profile that seemed perfect. They arranged to meet in person and discovered they had set up a date with their own spouse. They divorced shortly after. During the 51-day siege of the Branch Davidian compound in Waco in 1993, federal agents used sleep deprivation as a tactical weapon. All night long, they blasted sound through loudspeakers, jet engines, chanting, pop music, and the recorded screams of rabbits being slaughtered. Walt Disney is the second largest purchaser of explosives in the world, surpassed only by the U.S. Department of Defense. Disney is also the single largest consumer of fireworks on the planet. Every theme park show, every night, the numbers add up fast. Young male dolphins, when frustrated, have been documented attacking and killing porpoises in groups. Marine researchers have found porpoise carcasses with broken ribs and injuries consistent with bottlenose dolphin attacks. The behavior appears tied to social aggression and dominance practice. Dolphins are not what the posters suggest. The Hercules beetle, native to Central and South America, can lift over 100 times its own body weight. Males are known for their massive horns, which they use to fight rivals for territory and mates, throwing competitors off branches with remarkable force. In June of 1943, U.S. Congressman Andrew May announced at a press conference that American submarines were surviving Japanese depth charge attacks because the charges were detonating too shallow. Japan adjusted its settings based on that statement. Around 800 American sailors died as a result. David Grez takes junk motors, chains, rusty tools, and turns it into stunning animal sculptures. What's wild is how he captures emotion and movement using materials that can't move at all. Meet the NIO Eve. No steering wheel, no pedals. Just a floating lounge on wheels that drives itself. You control it from the metaverse. It's silent, electric, and it looks like something out of a dream. Omnidirectional wheels let vehicles spin in place or slide sideways like a crab. Any direction, zero turning radius. It's basically floating, and it's changing everything from robotics to next-gen cars. A laser can strip years of damage off an old wall in one single pass. No sanding, no mess, just a beam of light giving surfaces a second life. Interior design will never be the same. Ever notice tunnel entrances are way brighter than the inside? That's not a design flaw, it's intentional. Your eyes need time to adjust going from sunlight to darkness. Those bright lights buy your pupils the seconds they need to catch up. In Scientology, the number 33 is considered the master number, a symbol of pure love and selflessness. Now here's the bizarre part. Tom Cruise has been married 3 times, and every single one of his ex-wives, Mimi Rogers, Nicole Kidman, Katie Holmes, was exactly 33 years old when he left them. During World War II, penicillin was so scarce that doctors did the unthinkable. They collected patients' urine, extracted whatever penicillin had passed through the body, and gave it to the next patient who needed it. Dragonflies have existed for over 300 million years, and they cannot walk. Not even a single step. Their legs are built for gripping branches and snatching prey midair. Oh, and their eyes give them nearly 360 degrees of vision, ancient and still terrifying. In 1925, a con man named Victor Lustig sold the Eiffel Tower to a scrap metal dealer. He posed as a corrupt French government official, pocketed the cash, and fled to Austria before the buyer realized there was nothing to collect. One of the boldest scams in history. In 1883, someone had the brilliant idea to release mongooses into Hawaiian sugarcane fields to kill rats. One problem: rats are nocturnal. Mongooses are not. The 2 species barely ever crossed paths, and farmers ended up with a rat problem, a mongoose problem, and nearly wiped out native birds. The first product ever scanned with a barcode was a pack of Wrigley's Juicy Fruit gum. It happened on June 26, 1974, at a supermarket in Troy, Ohio. That quiet little beep changed global commerce forever. Bruce Lee was reportedly so fast he could toss a single grain of rice into the air and catch it with chopsticks before it hit the ground. Whether or not it's true, it's become the go-to example of what total physical mastery actually looks like. In 2014, NPR posted a link on Facebook claiming Americans had stopped reading. Hundreds of people raged in the comments without ever clicking the link. Those who actually read the article found a special message inside congratulating them. The post proved its own point perfectly. For centuries, some Buddhist monks pursued self-mummification. They'd survive on nothing but water, nuts, fruits, and seeds, then seal themselves inside a tiny tomb with just an air tube and a bell. If the bell stopped ringing, they were declared dead, and the tomb was sealed for 1,000 days. In 1991, the cruise ship Oceano started sinking. The captain and crew quietly slipped away without sounding a single alarm. The ship's entertainer, Moss Hills, grabbed the radio, called for help, and personally coordinated the rescue of every passenger on board. Scatomancy is the ancient practice of predicting someone's future by examining their feces. It sounds absurd until you realize that modern medicine now analyzes stool samples to detect infections, parasites, digestive disorders, and even certain cancers. Around 92% of all baby-changing tables in the United Kingdom tested positive for traces of cocaine. And in 1967, the citizens of Picoaza, Ecuador, elected a foot deodorant called Polvapese as their mayor. Both facts are real, neither should be. The English word twindling, meaning twins, is the longest word in the English language with no vowels. And in 1997, Iceland Foods launched a line called Crazy Vegetables, featuring chocolate-flavored carrots and pizza-flavored corn to trick kids into eating their greens. The Guinness Book of World Records holds a record of its own. It's the most stolen book from public libraries in the world. Editions had to be moved to monitored sections because they kept vanishing. People literally stole a book about records, setting an unofficial record in the process. Only 10 people have ever been made honorary members of the Harlem Globetrotters. 2 of them are Popes John Paul II and Pope Francis, an elite list that somehow includes both basketball legends and leaders of the Catholic Church. Robert Chesebro invented Vaseline, and he ate a spoonful of it every single day of his life. He lived to 96. Whether it was the Vaseline or just good genes, that kind of consistency definitely didn't hurt his product's reputation. Bolivia has 37 official languages written into its constitution as of 2009. Spanish dominates in daily life, but the law formally recognizes indigenous languages like Quechua, Aymara, and Guarani, a powerful gesture of cultural acknowledgement. In 1989, death row inmate Michael Godwin was awaiting execution by electric chair in South Carolina. He never made it to the execution. While sitting on the metal toilet in his cell, he bit into a live wire he was trying to fix on his TV and electrocuted himself. The male emperor moth can detect a female's pheromones from miles away, and the tarantula hawk wasp delivers one of the most painful stings of any insect on Earth. Experts genuinely recommend that if you get stung, you should lie down on the ground and just scream. In the 13th century, Pope Gregory IX declared cats to be incarnations of Satan. Europe responded by slaughtering them by the thousands. With cats gone, rat populations exploded, and historians believe this directly accelerated the spread of the Black Death. There's a tiny village in Normandy called Thierville. In 5 consecutive wars, including both world wars, not a single resident died in combat. Every soldier who left came home. In a century defined by mass death, one small village somehow stayed untouched. Guava might be the most underrated fruit on the planet. It has 4 times the vitamin C of an orange, 3 times the protein, 4 times the fiber of a pineapple, and more potassium than a banana. All in one fruit most people walk right past at the store. When Louis Réard invented the bikini in 1946, not a single professional model agreed to wear it publicly. So he hired Micheline Bernardini, a 19-year-old exotic dancer who had absolutely no problem with it. And just like that, one of the most iconic swimsuits in history made its debut. Hedgehogs are naturally buoyant. Their hollow quills keep them afloat, letting them swim across rivers and lakes when they need to. And despite looking slow and clumsy, some of them are surprisingly skilled climbers who spend a good chunk of their time up in trees. The 1904 Olympic Marathon in St. Louis might be the strangest race ever held. One competitor hitched a ride in a car for most of the course. Another used rat poison as a stimulant. A third ate rotten apples, took a nap mid-race, and still finished 4th. Absolute chaos from start to finish. In the summer of 2006, Disney quietly ended its promotional partnership with McDonald's. After years of Happy Meal tie-ins, the company decided it no longer wanted to be linked to a brand blamed for fueling the childhood obesity epidemic sweeping across America. In 1974, 17-year-old Neville Eben was killed in Bermuda when a taxi struck him off his moped. About a year later, his brother Erskine was riding that same moped down that same street and was killed by the same taxi, driven by the same driver. Lightning struck twice. Literally, the longest golf game ever played wrapped up in 2017. Adam Rolston and his caddy Ron Rutland started at the western tip of Mongolia and played their way across 1,249 miles of terrain. It took 82 days. Rolston hit the ball 20,093 times. In Jurassic Park, the sounds of the velociraptors weren't created digitally. Sound designer Gary Rydstrom recorded them at Marine World, and what you're actually hearing is tortoises mating. Nobody watching that film had any idea. Now you can never unhear it. The original lyric to Yesterday by the Beatles was "Scrambled Eggs." Paul McCartney woke up with the melody in his head and just hummed those words to hold on to it. The real title came weeks later. And yes, there's an actual medical condition called graphospasm. It's the clinical term for writer's cramp. A survey of 23,000 people across 22 countries found that about 20% of the world believes aliens are living among us, disguised as humans. In India and China, that number jumps to 40%. For his small role as a strung-out criminal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off in 1986, Charlie Sheen stayed awake for 48 straight hours before filming just to look the part. Method acting at its finest. Or perhaps, for Sheen, just a Tuesday. The University of Minnesota was founded before Minnesota was even a state. The school opened in 1851. The state wasn't officially admitted to the Union until 1858. The university existed before the government it was supposed to serve. On the night of February 19, 1916, a pressure buildup in a Brooklyn subway tunnel launched worker Marshall Mabee and two colleagues through mud and water, sending them flying more than 24 feet into the air above the East River. Mabee survived. That sentence should not be possible. During the Civil War, disease killed nearly twice as many soldiers as combat did. The biggest killer? Severe diarrhea. And soldiers on both sides developed an unspoken rule. You don't shoot a man while he's handling his business. Some codes of honor are universal. Killer whales aren't whales at all, they're dolphins. But speaking of animals in numbers, in January of 2011, a pack of over 400 wolves descended on the Russian village of Verkhoyansk, killing more than 30 horses in just 4 days. On March 2, 1945, Indian soldier Fazal Din led an assault on a Japanese position in Burma and was critically wounded mid-battle. He kept fighting anyway. He rallied his men, then walked back to base to deliver his report. He died shortly after. The mission was complete. Tom Scholz recorded Boston's debut album in his basement, then handed the tracks to the label as if they'd been done in a professional studio. That album has sold over 17 million copies. Where you work has nothing to do with what you create. George Washington is the only U.S. president to ever receive 100% of the electoral votes. He did it twice in 1789 and 1792. Every single elector voted for him both times. It has never happened since, and it almost certainly never will again. Iquitos. Peru has over 470,000 people and 0 roads connecting it to the outside world. You can only get there by river or by air. It's the largest city on Earth with no road access. Completely isolated, completely inhabited, completely unique. In 1997, to celebrate its 20th anniversary, Apple released a limited edition Mac priced at around $7,500. It was delivered to your door by a tuxedo-wearing Apple employee arriving in a limousine. Yes, that was a real product for real executives. Giant African pouch rats have been trained to detect tuberculosis with greater accuracy than many lab tests. They can also sniff out buried landmines, and because they're so light, they walk right over them without triggering a single one. They can sweep a tennis court-sized minefield in under 30 minutes. Yoda was designed by Stuart Freeborn, who blended 2 faces to create the wise old Jedi Master, his own face and Albert Einstein's. One of the most iconic characters in film history is literally part Einstein. You can never unsee that now. The first recorded use of the phrase trick or treat was in 1927 in Blackie, Alberta. A local paper reported kids going door to door demanding a treat or threatening a prank. What started in a small Canadian town eventually became a global Halloween tradition. In 2009, Brian Acton was rejected for a job at Facebook. 5 years later, in 2014, Facebook bought his company a little app called WhatsApp for $19 billion. Getting turned down was the best thing that ever happened to him. On April 19, 1951, a 20-year-old Japanese man named Shigeki Tanaka, who had witnessed the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, traveled to the United States and won the Boston Marathon in front of thousands of American 5 spectators. No words needed. In The Godfather from 1972, the word mafia is never spoken once. Producer Albert Ruddy struck a deal with mob boss Joseph Colombo. Remove the word from the script, donate premiere proceeds to an Italian-American civil rights league, and filming could proceed. A squid's esophagus passes directly through its donut-shaped brain. That means if a squid tries to swallow something too big, It can literally give itself brain damage. Evolution produced this design. It somehow works. Squids have been around for millions of years. Caterpillars eat over 27,000 times their own body weight during their larval stage. They also have up to 4,000 muscles in their tiny bodies. Humans, significantly larger, have 629. Nintendo was founded in 1889 as a playing card company. Their cards became wildly popular with the Japanese Yakuza, who used them in illegal gambling dens. The mob was essentially Nintendo's biggest early client. Without that money, the video game giant might never have existed. At the 1936 Berlin Olympics, Haiti and Liechtenstein showed up with identical flags. Neither country had any idea. The following year, Liechtenstein added a crown to its flag just to avoid future confusion. 2 nations, 1 flag, 1 awkward Olympics. In 1973, actor Anthony Hopkins went looking for a copy of The Girl from Petrovka in London. He found a random copy abandoned on a bench at a train station. 2 years later, he met the book's author, who revealed, stunned, that the copy Hopkins had found was the very one he himself had lost. Sliced bread was sold for the first time in Davenport, Iowa in 1928. The inventor, Otto Frederick Rohwedder, had built the first bread slicing machine back in 1912. He called it the greatest advance in baking since packaged bread. He was not wrong. Argentina got its name from European colonizers who believed the region was hiding mountains of silver. In Italian, Argentina roughly means silvery. The legendary silver mountain they were searching for never existed, but the name stuck forever. Michael Myers' mask in Halloween is literally a Captain Kirk mask from Star Trek. The prop department bought it, painted it white, and accidentally created one of the most terrifying faces in horror history. A sci-fi icon became a horror icon for less than $1. On February 5, 1958, the U.S. Air Force lost a nuclear bomb near Tybee Island, Georgia. 2 aircraft collided mid-flight. The bomb was dropped into the ocean to prevent detonation, and it was never recovered. It's still down there somewhere. In 1993, the Barbie Liberation Organization secretly swapped the voice boxes of 300 to 500 Barbie dolls and G.I. Joe action figures, then returned them to store shelves. The Barbie growled, "Vengeance is mine." The G.I. Joe asked to go to the beach. 35% of female prisoners in Saudi Arabia remain behind bars after serving their sentences because no male guardian comes to collect them. The law requires women to have male permission for basic daily acts. Prison becomes a trap with no exit. Draculin, named after Count Dracula, is a protein found in vampire bat saliva. It acts as a powerful anticoagulant, keeping blood from clotting while the bat feeds so it can drink faster and longer. Nature named it before scientists did. On October 2, 1948, 76-year-old philosopher Bertrand Russell demanded a seat in the smoking section of his flight, saying if he couldn't smoke, he'd die. His plane crashed on landing. 19 people in the non-smoking section were killed. Russell walked away without a scratch. During the filming of Spider-Man: Homecoming in 2017, Michael Keaton kept trolling Tom Holland between takes by quoting Batman lines. During one fight scene mid-punch, Keaton turned to Holland and whispered in his darkest voice, "I'm Batman!" Holland had no idea what to do with that. On July 21, 1992, Wayne McLaren, known as the Marlboro Man, died of lung cancer. Among his final words, "Take care of the children. Tobacco will kill them, and I am the proof." The face of the brand became its most powerful warning. In 2012, the Seoul government installed inspirational messages, sculptures, lights, and art on Mapo Bridge to prevent tragedies. The following year, incidents at that bridge actually increased significantly. Some problems don't have simple solutions. Certain termite species can rupture glands in their own bodies to release a toxic, sticky substance onto predators, killing themselves in the process to protect the colony. It's one of the most extreme acts of self-sacrifice in the entire animal kingdom. The longest ongoing civil war in history is still being fought today. The Karen conflict began in 1949 in what is now Myanmar, as Karen nationalists fought for independence from the central government. Over 70 years later, the fighting hasn't stopped. During the Cold War, the CIA used shell companies to secretly buy titanium from the Soviet Union, the only country that had enough of it to build the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird spy plane. The Soviets were unknowingly supplying the metal used to spy on themselves. In January of 1887, during a blizzard in Fort Keogh, Montana, a local rancher measured a snowflake over 15 inches wide. That remains the largest snowflake ever officially recorded. No storm since has come close. In 1949, the town of Mole Hill, West Virginia, officially renamed itself Mountain purely for the joke. And in 1962, American scientists detonated a hydrogen bomb 100 times more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima outside Earth's atmosphere, just to see what would happen. The average British driver spends more than 2 full days every year just waiting at red lights. In cities like London, that number climbs even higher. Several European cities have started rolling out smart traffic lights that adjust in real time. The math on wasted human hours is genuinely staggering. In 1977, William Campile stole a classified CIA satellite manual, quit his job, and sold it to the Soviets for $3,000. Then, believing his former bosses would be impressed, he confessed to the CIA and asked to become a double agent. He was arrested immediately. He spent 18 years in prison. 2 photons of light released during photosynthesis are invisible to the human eye but detectable by satellites in orbit. Scientists use this signal to monitor the health of forests and ecosystems from space, catching agricultural and environmental problems before they're visible from the ground. In 2011, retired fisherman Pereira Joao, 71 years old, rescued a South American penguin stranded on a beach near Rio de Janeiro. Every year since, the penguin named Dindum swims thousands of miles back to spend several months with the old man before returning to his colony. The loyalty of animals will always outpace our expectations. Boanthropy is a real psychological disorder in which a person genuinely believes they are a cow or other bovine animal. Cases are extremely rare and usually linked to severe psychotic episodes. It's been documented in ancient royal chronicles and medical texts going back centuries. In Denmark, burning your own national flag is completely legal. Burning a foreign country's flag is not. The reasoning: destroying another nation's symbol could be interpreted as a direct threat against a sovereign state. Your own flag, though, that's your business. In a ceremony in 1972, Charlie Chaplin received an honorary Oscar, his first time back in the United States in 20 years, after being blacklisted as a communist. When he walked on stage, his colleagues gave him a standing ovation that lasted 12 minutes. Hollywood owed him that, and they knew it. Hurricane Harvey in August of 2017 dropped so much rain on the southern United States that the National Weather Service had to add 2 entirely new colors to its flood maps: light purple and dark purple, because the actual rainfall doubled the previous maximum on record. Scaphism was an ancient Persian method of execution in which the victim was force-fed milk and honey, then coated in more honey and left exposed to insects for days. It is considered one of the most horrific forms of torture ever documented in recorded history. On September 11, 2001, after all U.S. flights were grounded, one plane was cleared to fly. It departed from San Diego and landed in Miami carrying emergency antivenom for a man dying from a venomous snakebite. The flight was escorted by 2 military jets. The man survived. On that day, someone had to. Bonobos, our closest genetic relatives among the great apes, and critically endangered, are naturally bisexual. They show no preference based on age or sex in their social behaviors. That trait alone has made them one of the most studied species in primatology and anthropology worldwide. The tumbleweed, that rolling symbol of the American West, isn't American at all. It's a Russian plant called Kali tragus that arrived in South Dakota in the 1870s, hidden inside a shipment of contaminated flaxseed. The most iconic image of the frontier is a foreign immigrant. In 1989, when Amy Irving divorced Steven Spielberg, she walked away with $100 million despite having signed a prenuptial agreement. The judge threw it out because it had been written on a cocktail napkin. That napkin cost Spielberg $100 million. Christopher Nolan's Memento from 2000 was called one of the most accurate portrayals of anterograde amnesia ever put on film by actual neurologists. A thriller built around a memory disorder, and the science was right. Hollywood rarely gets that lucky. Wildebeest calves can walk within minutes of being born and keep up with the herd within days. On the African plains, where predators are always watching, falling behind isn't an option. Speed isn't a skill, it's survival. On January 24, 2013, over 800,000 people across India came together to plant approximately 50 million trees in under 24 hours. A world record, a statement, a response to a planet in crisis. The language Pingu speaks isn't random gibberish. It's an actual performance tradition called Gramalot, a form of nonsense language used by clowns in satirical theater since the 16th century. That little penguin has more cultural depth than most people realize. Between 1946 and 1958, the United States detonated at least 23 nuclear bombs at Bikini Atoll. The local population was forcibly relocated. The land stayed contaminated for decades. Men are more than 5 times more likely to be struck and killed by lightning than women. Of 3,389 lightning fatalities on record, 85% were male. Nobody fully understands why, but the data is clear. In 2013, Venezuelan prisons held nearly 48,000 inmates in facilities built for 16,500, almost triple capacity. The math alone tells you everything you need to know. In 2016, Barack Obama became the first U.S. president in 88 years to officially visit Cuba. The last one had been Calvin Coolidge back in 1928. One visit, decades of complicated history in between. The flag of Bikini Atoll was redesigned with black stars replacing white ones, each representing an island destroyed by U.S. nuclear testing. It's one of the only flags in the world that commemorates damage inflicted by another nation. History stitched into fabric. Pronoia is the opposite of paranoia. Instead of believing everyone is out to get you, you're convinced everyone is secretly conspiring to do good things for you. It sounds wonderful, but it's a real disorder that distorts your ability to read reality accurately. A single bowl of corn has roughly 25,000 more genes than the entire human body. Meanwhile, humans have only 17 more genes than earthworms. The lesson: complexity has almost nothing to do with gene count. A 2016 study from Ohio State University found that acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, reduces empathy. People who took it were measurably less able to feel or understand other people's pain. The most common painkiller might be numbing more than just your headache. Most dinosaurs in Jurassic Park actually lived during the Cretaceous period, not the Jurassic, despite the title. And the velociraptors? They definitely had feathers. Fossil evidence confirms it. Hollywood took some creative liberties with the science. Salop was a hot drink popular in the 18th and 19th centuries, a cheap alternative to coffee and tea. It vanished almost overnight when rumors spread that it cured venereal disease. Being seen drinking it became so socially humiliating that the product simply ceased to exist. In a 1962 Looney Tunes short called Mexican Borders, Speedy Gonzalez's cousin Slowpoke was introduced, and the character strongly implied the slower mouse had a habit of smoking marijuana. Controversial, even by the standards of the time. Typhoons, cyclones, and hurricanes are the exact same weather phenomenon. The only difference is where they form. Atlantic and North Pacific, hurricane. Northwestern Pacific, typhoon. Southeastern Indian Ocean, severe tropical cyclone. One storm, three names, zero difference. Before Abraham Lincoln became president or even a lawyer, he co-owned a tavern in New Salem, Illinois. He's also the only U.S. president in history to hold an official bartender's license. The man contained multitudes. Rocky was filmed in just 28 days. Stallone and a tiny crew drove around Philadelphia in a van and jumped out to shoot whenever the director spotted something visually interesting on the street. One of the greatest sports movies ever made, built on pure hustle. A pigeon's bones are actually lighter than the total weight of all its feathers combined. The skeleton barely registers. All that apparent mass is plumage. Evolution found a way to make flight look effortless by making the frame disappear. In Marvel Comics, Wolverine stands 5 feet 2 inches tall but weighs 300 pounds due to his adamantium skeleton. Run the BMI numbers and that elite, shredded warrior is technically classified as severely obese. The chart wasn't built for him. Woodpeckers strike with a force 1,000 times greater than gravity, repeatedly, all day. Their skulls are engineered to absorb and redirect that energy. And their tongues are so long they actually wrap around the inside of the skull, acting as a second shock absorber. Nature over-engineered this one. In 1994, Apple used the codename Carl Sagan for the Power Macintosh 7100. Sagan sued. Apple responded by changing the codename to BHA. When Sagan found out BHA stood for Butthead Astronomer, he sued again. Apple won both times, but the nickname stuck. Eating horse meat is called hippophagy, from the Greek hippos for horse and phagine for eat. It's taboo in many countries, but still a traditional food across parts of Europe and Asia. And historically, it surged during wars and famines when options ran out. New York and London are getting farther apart by about 1 inch every year. The North American and Eurasian tectonic plates are slowly separating along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. They've been drifting apart for millions of years, and they're not stopping. Tetranitratoxycarbon is a hypothetical molecule first theorized by a 10-year-old girl named Clara Lazin in Kansas City, Missouri, while playing with molecular models in science class. She is now officially credited as co-author of a scientific paper, 10 years old. The Mahabharata is the longest poem ever written, around 1.8 million words across 74,000 verses. If someone tried to recite it non-stop without rest, it would take approximately 2 full weeks to finish, front to back. In the legendary 1996 Marvel vs. DC crossover, Flash raced against Quicksilver. Flash won. He was also reportedly disappointed that the two speedsters weren't friends. A detail that says a lot about the Flash as a character. Flamin' Hot Cheetos were invented by Richard Montañez, a janitor at a Frito-Lay factory, who had an idea, pitched it to the executives, and changed snack history. He later became an executive vice president at PepsiCo. From mopping floors to the boardroom. In 2005, rapper MIA named her debut album Aryular after her father, a Tamil tiger fighter. The strategy was deliberate. She wanted him to Google his own name, find the album, and reach out to her. It worked exactly as planned. The first non-white player in NBA history was Wataru Misaka, a Japanese-American from Utah who played for the New York Knicks in 1947. He broke the color barrier years before the civil rights movement changed American sports forever. Octopuses have 3 hearts and blue blood. Their oxygen is carried by a copper-based protein instead of iron. Separately, the Kalenjin people of Kenya make up just 0.06% of the world's population, yet they win nearly 70% of elite long-distance running events globally. Some things remain unexplained. In 1908, Hershey Park hired someone to paint the sign for a new carousel ride. The The painter made a spelling mistake. Rather than fix it, the park just ran the attraction under the misspelled name for 32 years before finally correcting it. Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not radioactive today. The bombs detonated in the air, so the fireballs never touched the ground, which dramatically reduced fallout. That technical detail is why both cities were rebuilt and are fully inhabited today. In 2011, the most stolen car in the United States was the 1994 Honda Accord. One was stolen every 46 seconds. Somewhere out there, millions of Accords just got very nervous. In 1996, Kermit the Frog delivered the commencement speech at Southampton College. And in late 1990, Muhammad Ali flew to Iraq and personally negotiated the release of 15 American hostages with Saddam Hussein. Several churches in Malta have two clocks. The one on the right shows the correct time for parishioners. The one on the left is intentionally set wrong to confuse the devil and prevent him from disrupting services. A charming, very specific solution to a very specific problem. In 1924, while imprisoned at Landsberg Fortress in Bavaria, Adolf Hitler wrote a letter to a Mercedes-Benz dealer asking for a loan to buy a limousine. The future dictator was completely broke. The tone of the letter was, by all accounts, remarkably humble. Chimpanzees at a sanctuary in Zambia started putting blades of grass in their ears for no apparent reason. Then others copied them. Scientists documented it as evidence of cultural tradition among non-human primates. Fashion, apparently, is not uniquely human. A company in Essex, England, called Rent a Mourner, will send professional actors to your funeral. They attend the service, mingle, and tell convincing stories about how well they knew the deceased. The goal: make the dearly departed seem more popular than they actually were. In 1781, Benjamin Franklin wrote an essay titled A Letter to a Royal Academy, better known as Fart Proudly. It was his way of mocking European academic societies for being too pretentious to address topics of any practical use. Franklin contained multitudes. On January 9, 1386, in France, a pig was formally arrested, put on trial in a human court for the murder of a child, and sentenced to death by hanging. The sentence was carried out. Between 1979 and 1982, an average of 8,179 toothpick-related injuries were reported annually in the United States. At least 3 people died from swallowing them. Today, around 9,000 people are hospitalized by toothpicks every year. The most underestimated hazard in the kitchen? Breatharianism is the belief that a human being can survive on air and light alone, no food, no water. Some claim to have done it for extended periods. Multiple people have died attempting it. The belief persists anyway. In 1965, 4-year-old Roger Lawyer was saved from drowning by a woman named Alice Blay. 9 years later, Roger pulled a drowning man from the water at the same beach. That man turned out to be Alice's husband. Coincidence doesn't begin to cover it. The average person weighing around 154 pounds carries more than 0.2 milligrams of pure gold dissolved in their blood. It sounds trivial, but gold is currently used in real medical treatments for rheumatoid arthritis and certain cancers. You are, quite literally, worth your weight in gold. James Monahan sold his share of a small pizza restaurant bought with his brother Tom for $500 in exchange for a used Volkswagen Beetle. 38 years later, Tom sold 93% of that restaurant for $1 billion. The restaurant was Domino's. The Beetle cost James everything. Al Capone's business card said he was a used furniture dealer. Every time he had trouble with authorities, he'd flash the card and claim he was just a humble secondhand salesman. It worked. For years, the simplest cover stories are always the most effective. In Slovakia and parts of Europe, it's a Christmas tradition to keep a live carp swimming in the family bathtub for a day or two before killing it for Christmas Eve dinner. Whether that's charming or traumatic depends entirely on how long the kids had time to name it. India celebrates Children's Day on November 14th, exactly 9 months after Valentine's Day. Separately, William Shatner and his Star Trek co-star DeForest Kelley didn't speak for nearly 2 years after Shatner laughed at the death of Kelly's Chihuahua. Before he died on July 4, 2013, Cleveland Browns superfan Scott Ensminger specified in his will that 6 Browns players should serve as his pallbearers. His reason? So they could let him down one final time. A man who stayed on brand until the very end. The Yukon Quest is considered the toughest sled dog race on Earth. Every February, mushers run over 1,000 miles from Fairbanks, Alaska, to Whitehorse, Canada. In 2010, Hans Gatt and his dogs completed the entire course in 9 days and 26 minutes, the fastest time in the race's history. Giant catfish in northern Europe have been observed launching themselves onto land to snatch pigeons and shorebirds, then dragging them back into the water to drown them exactly like a crocodile. Some of these European catfish exceed 6 feet in length and weigh over 220 pounds. The rivers are not safe. In 2010, a 10-year-old girl named Laura Buckton released a helium balloon with a note from the center of England. It was found 140 miles away by another girl also named Laura Buckton, nearly the same age and height, and with the exact same pets. The universe occasionally runs out of ideas. From March 1952 to May 1956, Kent cigarettes sold by Lorillard contained a filter made with chrysotylite blue asbestos, considered the most dangerous of all 6 recognized asbestos types. Smokers had no idea. The filter was marketed as a health feature. Death row inmates in Indiana received their last meal 2 to 3 days before execution, not the day of. The reason is simple. On the actual day, almost nobody has an appetite. It's one of the most quietly revealing details about what it feels like to face the end. Before he was killed on October 20th, 2011, Muammar Gaddafi was considered by some estimates to be the wealthiest person on Earth. Between global corporate investments, bank accounts, and other assets, his fortune reportedly exceeded $200 billion. In 2017, the Philippines had the slowest average internet speed in all of Southeast Asia, just 3.54 megabits per second, a number that was already well below the global acceptable minimum at the time. In 2016, researchers found that people with chronic lower back pain have spines structurally similar to chimpanzees. Their vertebrae simply aren't fully adapted for upright walking. Evolution hasn't quite finished the job yet. There is a Green Lantern character named Dekirtzi RRR, introduced in Green Lantern Volume 2, number 188 in 1985, who is a sentient mathematical equation. A living equation that fights evil as a full member of the Green Lantern Corps. Comics contain everything. During the Civil War, the Union deliberately flooded Confederate communities with counterfeit currency. The resulting inflation gutted the South's economy and undermined its ability to fund the war. Financial warfare, long before anyone called it that. Bees are the only insect on Earth that produces food eaten by humans. Honey can last for years without spoiling, thanks to its low moisture content and natural antibacterial properties. And without bees pollinating the world's crops, a significant portion of the human food supply would collapse. On February 28, 2007, 170 Swiss soldiers accidentally invaded Liechtenstein during a nighttime training march. They realized the mistake and turned around immediately. Liechtenstein's spokesperson said it wasn't a problem and that these things happen. The most polite invasion in recorded history. Edinburgh Castle, Scotland's most visited paid attraction, sits on top of a volcanic plug formed over 350 million years ago. The plug is called Castle Rock. Humans have been building on geological history for as long as there have been humans. On August 13, 1941, Henry Ford unveiled what became known as the soybean car at a community festival in Dearborn, Michigan. It weighed only 2/3 of a standard steel vehicle and was partially built from soy and other crop-derived materials, decades ahead of its time. Yale researchers found that lizards have sleep patterns remarkably similar to humans, and the largest beaver dam ever discovered sits in Wood Buffalo National Park in Alberta, Canada. And that's a wrap. If you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves learning something new every day. See you in the next one.